Flying Casual with the Andrew Fantasia, who you might know from I Rebel. Yeah, Andrew, thanks a lot for coming on Flying Casual. You didn't have a choice. How you doing on this, whatever day it is, Thursday, whatever it is? So like a year ago now, we started the show called Vote of No Confidence. And I don't know if you remember, you did one with Rob McDonald, and he said that Ian McDermott's performance in the Revenge of the Sith was terrible. And you said, no, he's the greatest actor and the greatest performance of all time. And then like we started the actual show a little while later. And right now it's you and somebody else, and you guys argue Star Wars. It's a fun argument. For those of you that have not seen it, check it out. It's a lot of fun. This week, I think you're doing it with Joshua Lucas from the Den of Nerds, and you're going to argue whether or not Luke Skywalker is evil. He's not. But the very first one you did, I believe, was, is Rey A Kenobi or is Rey A Palpatine? Because I remember you were doing your web show, Thumb Wars. You ran those scripts, and you met me at the food court in the mall. That's where everyone has the meetings. And you said, before I show you these scripts, I think Rey is a Palpatine. So before we go into anything, can you just explain why you think Rey is a Palpatine to me?
Yeah. By the way, I remember that meeting. That feels like so long ago. Rey, I think, is a Palpatine because if I was in charge of writing this new trilogy, that's exactly what I would make her. And yeah, maybe it's a little bit because I'm biased because Palpatine's my favorite character and I want to keep him in there because I love him. But it also makes sense to me from just a character development standpoint because there's a very popular theory that Rey is a Kenobi, and there's other popular theories that she's a Skywalker and whatnot. But I think that the most powerful story point we could hit is by making her a Palpatine, just for the simple reason that Palpatine was not a very good person. He was not loved. And if you are Rey, and you, like, we saw that beautiful line in the trailer where she says, I want someone to tell me my place in all of this. So if you're the kind of person who says that, I want someone to tell me my place in all of this, and that person you're talking to sits you down and says, honey, your place in all this is your grandfather was Space Hitler. That would just be the most soul-crushing thing in the world to hear. I love Rey. I think she's a really cool character. She's a hero. I want to see her succeed. I want to see her come out on top and be a great Jedi. And all heroes are defined by the struggles that they overcome. That's what makes them heroes. It would be a huge struggle for her from a moral standpoint if she learns, oh my God, the most evil man who ever lived was my grandfather. And now possibly the First Order wants me because my blood is Palpatine's blood, and they are all about emulating the Empire. So that is going to rock her world in a way that will shatter the foundations. Everything she thinks she knows about herself, everything she thinks she knows about the galaxy is going to come crumbling around her. And it's a great juxtaposition too, just from a social standpoint, from like a oh God, what's the word? Like a class system standpoint, because Rey was even more poor than Luke Skywalker. Rey was literally living on her own in a junkyard, trading metal for little bits of food. She was probably as poor can get in this galaxy. Emperor Palpatine was as rich can get in this galaxy. So that juxtaposition is also something that's great to see, how super evil, super rich, super good, super poor, and then they're going to meet in the middle, and she's going to be like, oh my God, look where I came from and look where I am now. The possibilities are endless if she's a Palpatine. And I feel like if she's anything else, there are possibilities there, sure, but they are nowhere near the goldmine that this could be.
Even if she was Revan?
A Revan?
I gotta bring this up from yesterday's I Rebel episode. Yeah, do you think there's a possibility that she could be the new canon Revan?
The new canon Revan? Maybe in the sense that there's the whole loss of memory thing. Yeah, I can see that happening with Rey. I can see that maybe she's got bits and pieces of her own memory that have been taken away from her. And that would be kind of cool. I could get on board with that. But, I mean, it was a great plot point in the game, in KOTOR. So if you're going to take that plot point and bring it somewhere else into Star Wars, then yeah, that's as good a place as any to put it. I mean, do it with somebody new, do it with something we don't expect, because if they make a Darth Revan movie, which you've already heard me say countless times would be a stupid idea, everybody watching that movie who's familiar with the game is going to know what the twist is. So it's like, why even bother sitting there and pay money to watch it? So if you're going to do that twist, if you want to take that twist and use it somewhere else, use it with somebody that we don't expect. Use it with Rey. Use it with Poe, for God's sake. Use it with something that's going to just blow us away and be like, holy cow, I didn't see that coming, just like that game did. So I don't think she's the next Revan by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that that plot point from that game can definitely carry on again somewhere else.
Now, I have to bring this up too, because this is a response to that vote of no confidence you did 700 years ago. I lost it. My phone just crapped out. Okay, so here it's from Roka Music 10. And Roka Music's 10 response to you is, I'd say both. That Rey is both a Kenobi and a Palpatine. Is there any way you could see this plausibly shape out in Last Jedi or Episode 9 or 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, the book, comic, video game, etc., etc.?
It'll definitely play out in Episode 16. I think that's a given at this point.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, Roka Music 10, thank you. Hello, and thank you for watching and commenting. We love getting feedback from all you people out there, so thank you very much for that. Could she be a Palpatine and a Kenobi? See, I don't know. I mean, the trick here, and this is one of my big weaknesses, is there's a lot of math that we got to do in our heads. Because Palpatine was a fair bit older than Obi-Wan, but Obi-Wan was still old enough that if you descend from him, rather, during the time of Force Awakens, you would have to be at least his grandchild. So the only way that would work is if she was Obi-Wan's granddaughter and Palpatine's great-granddaughter, which could happen. I mean, Palpatine could have had a daughter, like you said, like Roka Music 10 brought up. Palpatine could have had a daughter who fell in love with Obi-Wan, and they had a child. Let's say that child's name was James Razile. And James Razile, was like, oh my God, my dad is Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's a Jedi, and my mom is the daughter of Emperor Palpatine. This is really crazy and scary. What a weird life I live. And then James Razile goes off and does his own thing, and he goes to some faraway planet, and he meets this girl named Erin, and they get married, and they have a daughter named Rey. And they're like, you know what? We don't want Rey to be any part of this. This is too messed up. There's some Days of Our Lives stuff happening here. We just want her to, not have to deal with this. And they send her to Jakku. So yeah, that could work. That could be a thing that happens. Like I said, it would have to be a granddaughter of Kenobi, great-granddaughter of Palpatine situation, but it's not impossible.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, Palpatine, he could have created life in some way before he passed. So then that would give 30 years between. So Rey is 19 when we meet her in The Force Awakens. She's 19. So that gives 11 years after. So
hold on, where's the number 11 come?
After Return of the Jedi, 11 years after Return of the Jedi, Rey is born.
Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
So he could have created life at some point before that. The life he created could have been on a mission to find Obi-Wan and infiltrate Obi-Wan. Hear me out here. This is brilliant. No, wait, that doesn't work. None of this works, I'm thinking. Anyway, here's my thing. I don't want her to be a Kenobi or a Palpatine because she's a Skywalker. No, seriously. I don't think I want her to be either. And I always say it's easy to explain anything. You can explain anything. Now, they're doing the Obi-Wan film. So if I had to guess, if she's related to any of them, Obi-Wan would be my first guess, if I had to, because of that Obi-Wan film. So then you can go in and be like, just so you know, while this was happening, this happened with Obi-Wan. He had a child. and that child ended up having a child, and that's Rey. And that timeline actually would probably work out. Palpatine, on the other hand, let's say he created life. The life is a female. That female meets Obi-Wan. They fall in love. She gives birth to a child. Then the truth comes out that she is Palpatine's creation, not even like child, like a creation. And Obi-Wan's like, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? And then the child, kind of like a Moses thing, puts a child in like a river, sends the child away, like, no, banished. That child grows up, doesn't know who he is. He's the child, or he or she is born to, is raised in like slavery or something like that. And then falls in love and they have a child. But then this child is Rey now, and this child shows way too much power. And they're like, we don't know what to do. Ship this child to Jakku. Or that's where everything lines up. So in that way, I could see it actually kind of playing out. And I'm actually kind of interested in that story that I just told. It's called the 10 Galactic Commandments is what it is. But there is a way for her to be Palpatine and Kenobi and not be cheesy or goofy. The only thing is, are people going to go along with Palpatine creating life? Because you mentioned it on Vote No Confidence last week, and you're like, midichlorians, and you don't even have to say midichlorians, and I agree with you on that. It's like they exist whether you say it or not. Like either way, something's going to create the life. It's going to be the Force, midichlorians, whatever. Doesn't matter. Don't say midichlorians. But people have responded like, I don't want another Force birth, and people really seem against the Force birth. But I mean, again, but if you have Palpatine create life, then it's not. Is it a Force birth at that point, or is it like wizardry? I don't even know where that would stand.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're still in the dark as to whether Anakin was a Force birth or whether he was a Plagueis wizard birth or whether Shmi was lying. We're still really not sure. And I agree with those people. I'm not a fan of the idea of just immaculate Force conception either. However, I would love them to address it again, if only to make that Phantom Menace Force birth better by association, by kind of tidying it up a bit, by saying, look, Shmi wasn't entirely truthful because XYZ, or Shmi was telling the truth, but he was created because of ABC, and at least it's not just this biblical miracle. At least it gives us this sort of tangible idea that we can get behind, and then at that point, we can leave it alone. And at that point, the people who hated the Force birth can at least watch Phantom Menace now and be like, all right, at least in episode 9, they kind of explain why this is a thing. And then we can just move on from it. Just housekeeping from mistakes from the past.
Yeah, I agree. And I would have, and maybe I'm alone in this, but I think you might agree with me, but I know there's a lot of people that won't. But I don't mind if they even say the word midi-chlorian again. I know J.J. Abrams said, "We'll never say midi-chlorian again," and Jar Jar is buried on Jakku, and crybaby. But there's nothing wrong with the freaking word. It's a word. When I first saw the Phantom Menace, and everyone, if you watched the episode 64 of Rebels Scum podcast, you know that I absolutely love the Phantom Menace. But when I watched it, there were two things that threw me off. Force birth, I was like, that's hitting the nail on the head. And also midichlorians. I was like, oh. Because the thing with midichlorians is it's basically just the Force, and now George Lucas added a scientific term to the Force, basically. Like that's all it is. He added, where Star Wars has always been sci-fi fantasy, more fantasy. He was like, no, this will be more sci-fi now, and that's all it is. I have no issue with that. I would love it if at some point Luke is like, look, girl, somebody played around with your midichlorians, and here you are. What's the problem with that? I mean, you could easily be like, someone manipulated the Force to create you, but why would that? How come that makes you happier than the midichlorian explanation?
Right. Yeah. It's all. I guess it's all a matter of personal preference. It's
just words.
Yeah, people didn't like those words. They didn't like the idea of single cell organisms or whatever. And yeah, I can get behind that. I'd rather keep the Force magic if possible, because magic in a sci-fi is a very unique thing.
But no, and I agree with that. But isn't it still kind of magic? Like, it's still kind of magic. It's just a more scientific matter. Like it still doesn't exist. You know, you still have to be someone special to have it. Really, you know what I mean? Like that's all I'm saying. Like, look, like I said, I'm not a big fan of it either. I just don't understand the so much hate that goes towards it.
Yeah.
But yes, have fun with Star Wars also.
Yeah, I can get behind Rey being one of those births, but like I said, like make it a bit of housekeeping, make it a bit of something like, look here, let's clear the air about Anakin, while also tying it into Rey's origin in a nice little bow, and then I'll be satisfied. I'll be good with that. I don't hate Anakin's birth as much as I know a lot of people do, and that's fine if you do. But I do like the idea of this story connecting to that story and making it more cohesive.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't like retconning so much. I know they're like, we could retcon this and retcon that, but the Anakin thing, I wouldn't even feel like it's a retcon. I would feel like it's a seed. You know, if you want to go into J.J. Abrams, the mystery box. The mystery box is he was born, there was no father. I can't explain it. To Palpatine in the opera saying he could create life. To now Snoke saying, yeah, life was created. It was the one that I pretended was the chosen one who would fulfill the prophecy, blah, 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 blah. Or is the one, or it was the chosen one. But we accidentally created the chosen one. And we thought that this Jedi was too powerful, so we had to control it. Blah. Who knows? Like, you could go back and you could make that relevant like so easily, and it would enhance everything that you saw before it. It wouldn't be like, what was some retcons that I just can't stand. I can't remember what they are right now because obviously now that I need to talk about them, I can't think of them. But you know, we've talked about Brock and I have
comic
all the
books
time.
do it.
Yeah, but you know, comic books, I could give them a pass sometimes because, you know, if you're reading a comic Spider-Man that's been around for 60 years, like, you retcon it. It's 60, you know what I mean? Like, it's 60 years, or it just started, you know what I mean? But Star Wars, okay, Star Wars has been around for 40 years, but there's been 8 of them. Like, that's where the difference is. Now, if you were like, I just started a comic book, James, and you're like, I wrote 3 issues, but, you know, I didn't like what I wrote, so I'm going to pretend that these didn't happen. Then I'd be like, are you what? You know, so I have no problem with that retconning, but other little retcons, like, I have a question for you now. A certain point of view, it turns out Yoda's waiting for Leia. Obi-Wan says, no, it's Luke.
Mm-hmm.
And then we know he says there is another. Would you have a problem if they retcon that other to not be Leia, but to be somebody else now?
Not at all. I'm actually hoping they do that. I think that would be really cool because, you know, I love Empire, I love Jedi, but when Yoda says there is another, and we all assume he's talking about Leia, that never ends up mattering because Leia doesn't have to fight Vader and go up against Palpatine. That never comes into play at all. So that was just saying there is another for the sake of saying there is another, just to tease it and be mysterious and whatnot. I think that you could easily make that somebody else, and it would fit perfectly, and it would be so cool. Yoda is the guy who would know if there was somebody else floating around out there. And one thing that a lot of people need to differentiate is that when he says there is another in Empire, in Jedi, he says there is another Skywalker when he's talking to Luke about Leia. So there's people sometimes tend to blur those two together and be like, oh, it has to be Leia because in Jedi he says who it is. And like, no. He says to Luke there's another Skywalker. But in a totally different movie, he says to Obi-Wan, just there is another, period. So I think that it is actually in their best interests to make that other somebody other than Leia, whether it's Rey, whether it's Snoke, whether it's somebody we haven't even met yet, just to make that count. Because right now it's a cool line and we all love it and I love it, but it doesn't matter because Leia doesn't do anything.
I'm going to subtly disagree with you. And I'm going to agree that there's no payoff to that line. Because there isn't. So you can't. But it's been 30 years. Like Yoda, as powerful as he was, it wouldn't be Rey. Do you know what I mean? Like, he wouldn't be like, no, Rey's coming in 30 years to defeat Vader. Like, it was kind of like, we need someone now. And Luke was the one. And really what it was Lucas had episode 7, 8, 9 planned with whatever. And so she wasn't supposed to be Leia. It was supposed to be somebody else that came along. And then scrapped those plans and decided to make it Leia. That's really where the problem is. And that's probably why he retconned it in Return of the Jedi and said there is another Skywalker, because Yoda's probably still referring to exactly what he referred to in the movie before that, but now he's adding the tag Skywalker so that everybody knows, okay, we're staying close to home here. But the only reason I disagree with you on it, because part of me would agree with you, obviously, but is because of it's been 30 years. I think it's one of those things like Luke and Leia kissing. We can just let it go. I think as Star Wars fans, we like to dwell on these lines. And whether or not the story group does, and J.J. Abrams does, and Rian Johnson does, I have no idea. But we like to dwell on these lines that really have no bearing on Episode 7 whatsoever. And The Force Awakens, it's not like The Force Awakens is like, there is another, and this is who the other one is, blah, blah. Now, the way they could retcon it is the other could be Leia, and it could be Ben Solo through Leia. And Ben Solo is the key to it all. Unless Rey is a Solo, then Rey could be the key to it all. Do you know what I mean? Like, it could still be, you could still clean it up that way, but make it her offspring.
Yeah, that's a cool way to do it. And, like, you know, it'd be a cool little double bluff, because if you bring it up again, you can make the audience think, oh, maybe that other wasn't Leia. And then we follow this through line and it's like, oh, it was Leia, but just in a way we didn't expect. So yeah, I'd be down for that too. Just some way to make that line important instead of just a cool line that didn't pay off.
But is it worth sacrificing story just to make a line from a movie that's 30 years old relevant?
No, because you do it without sacrificing the story. That's the trick. And I mean, you've already committed to sitting down and writing a new trilogy and God knows what else beyond. So if you're going to play in this universe, you might as well use the tools that Lucas left for you. And that's one big glaring tool that keeps, you know, flashing. So use it. Make that's gift wrap for you. Use it.
Well, if they didn't look far enough under the tree, they might not find that last gift wrap gift that's there. That's the only problem with it. I'm now sitting here, and when I watched the trailer for The Last Jedi, Aaron said to me, so that's Han and Leia's daughter when Rey showed up. And I was like, that's strange. That's just, like, that's where her mind went. And actually, when we watched The Force Awakens last, she said that to me again. Like, before we watched this trailer, we watched it a few months ago. She goes, so that's Han and Leia's daughter. Like, that is where her mind is. A friend of ours, she sent me a text message. She goes, so that's Leia's daughter. So Rey is a Solo. And I'm looking at, I'm like, well, what point of this trailer are you guys seeing this in? Now, I when I went into The Force Awakens, I was like, she's a Skywalker. That was like just my head. I thought the movie was going to end exactly how it did, but when she handed the lightsaber, she was gonna say father. Then that's how it would end. And you'd be like, oh. And I remember when she's walking up the steps, I'm like nudging Rob, because I told Rob, this is a true story. I told Rob the day before we went to go see, or 2 days before we went to go see the movie, I called him. I said, Rob, I want to tell you exactly what I think is going to happen in The Force Awakens, just so I tell somebody. And I told Rob, and it took like an hour, and I told him the beginning to end of The Force Awakens. And I think I told you, I got like 85, 90% of it right. Like, it scared me. And this is based on just the trailer and the international trailer. And I was like, well, I mean, if this happens and that happens, and I just told him, and he was like, in the theater, he's like looking at me every once in a while, like, you son of a, because I think I ruined it for him too. But so my head was always at, and this is why the Reylo thing never came to my mind, because I thought she was a Skywalker. And if she's a Skywalker and he's a Solo, Reylo's not happening. They made that mistake once. So, I mean, if she's not, then Reylo's whatever. So that's where my head was. And while I'm watching the movie, the Han and Rey interactions, which I still think they were really, really, really going for the Obi-Wan Luke, and not to compare it to A New Hope, because that's tired. But I really think that's, and we talked about it on this episode 64, where that was the Obi-Wan and Luke thing, but it never felt as touching. Like we never felt as emotionally connected to those two characters together as we did Obi-Wan and Luke. And there were times when Han would look at Rey and I'd be like, okay, that's his daughter. There's just like fatherly looks that he gives her, which is, and I was like, I don't want her to be a Solo, but I'm like, I think they're gonna make her a Solo. But I think those looks were actually just their way of being their. Look at their chemistry. They're like a father and daughter, like Obi-Wan, and like adoptive father, like Obi-Wan. I think that's more where they were going with that.
Yeah, like she grew up without parental figures. I mean, Ankar Plutt is not the kind of person you want raising you. She doesn't know what it's like to have a father or a mother. So she immediately would latch on to Han in that regard. And Han, we've spent 3 movies with Han where he's like this scoundrel guy and he's just brash and uncouth and whatnot. And now we finally get a movie where Han Solo has been, for a large chunk of his life, a parent. So now he has that paternal instinct. He has that, if he's around a person that young, he probably has a protecting instinct towards them because he's a dad. He knows what that's like. So we get this part of Han where it's like, I want to protect these young kids because I see my own child in them. And with Rey, we get this whole like, God, I finally have somebody who's like a father figure to me. I want to latch onto that. And it makes perfect sense that they would have that chemistry. I think that was great. That was really sweet. And it's these two people, these two kind of lost people, because Han's kind of lost too when we meet him, who just kind of find each other at the right time. And she's looking for family. He lost his wife and son, like Leia's not around anymore. So he's looking for family too. They kind of needed each other. And I thought that was a really sweet way to do that and get them together and get them to play off one another and have those father-daughter moments. But yeah, I never really expected or saw or anything that made me think she was a Solo. That never came up, at least for me.
It was just those looks that I got, but I never thought she was. But yeah, these like, if she is, I would, even more than the Luke and Han reunion, I would say, well, you just robbed Rey of her father because of a mystery box.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think that would be where they would go. But at the same time, I've only seen Rob Power like this once before, and if he is talking about Kylo, which is a huge debate, we won't get into that so much right now. His Kylo's sister could potentially be the only other one to have that sort of raw power, somebody that is in that Skywalker bloodline. I do, and this is where I'm like, that's why it makes sense for Rey to have Skywalker blood in her if she's that powerful, and if the Skywalkers are that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they're gonna end it at 10. I think if you end it at 10, she has to be a Skywalker to have a satisfying ending to the Skywalker saga. If you're going to keep going, Ben Solo could be your Skywalker, and Rey could be your Plutt.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone's like, well, Ben Solo's a Skywalker, but his name's not Skywalker. So he's Skywalker saga. Either Anakin's the beginning, Luke is the end of that saga, or Rey's in there, or is what I like to think that this whole trilogy, these 6 pillages. How do you call a 6-number movie? A sextuple? Sextuple? What?
Sextology.
I'm not gonna say that. And this is about Anakin. I think it's about Anakin. I think 1, 2, 3 about Anakin. 4, 5, 6 about Vader, 7, 8, 9 about Anakin, and it's all about Anakin's his cause and effect. How about that?
Right. Yeah, I can get behind that. It was a very neat way to do those first 6 movies, where you have trilogy 1 that focuses on Obi-Wan, trilogy 2 that focuses on Luke, but altogether they're about Anakin. So yeah, I could totally be down for trilogy 3 focuses on Rey, but again, Anakin's presence is kind of what drives the story and what he did. Her being a Skywalker doesn't really compute for me either, but I'm not going to walk out of the theater if that turns out to be the case. But like you said, at the end of the day, you can find a way to explain anything. You said that at the beginning of this video, and I think that's very true. You can explain anything if you do it properly. I mean, I've heard people argue before about, like I was talking to some folks about who Rey was, like back when Force Awakens came out, and somebody in that group I was talking to thought she was a Solo, and another person in the group brought up, like, well, no, wait, it's impossible because Han and Leia, if she was raised by Han and Leia in that house with the Solos, why does she have a British accent? Neither of them have British accents. And I was like, well, she did spend most of her life with Angkor Plutt. So, you know, he's British. You can you can explain anything with any simple piece of trivia. So we really just got to wait and see, man. Episode 8 or 9, whatever one's going to tell us, we're going to find out. And we just have to prepare ourselves for the answer and let ourselves not get disappointed by whatever it's going to be.
Why does Finn have an American accent?
Because he was born to do one thing, but now he's got nothing to fight for.
I'm going to tweet John Boyega. We'll see if he gets back to me on this one. I think that's an intriguing way to go with that side Akbar, because you have the Empire was always British, Phasma's British, Hux is British, Kylo Ren is not. What's up with Finn? Although I guess Trader wasn't British.
Yeah, the troopers are American accents. Yeah, there was one Australian sounding one in Rogue One. A guy who's like, must be another pickup. But that was about it.
I wonder why they're all like that. Anyway, let's end this. Final thoughts. Rey, Kenobi, Palpatine. Could she be a combination of the both?
Yeah, it's not impossible. It takes some math and some molding around, but it's definitely not impossible. And I'd be down as long as there's some Palpatine blood in her, because that would be some juicy story. I
don't think that's the way they're going to go, but it's different. I'll say that it's different, and it's not unbelievable. So whatever. I'm just going to watch the movie anyway. It doesn't really matter. I don't think we're going to learn too much about her parents in this movie. I think they're going to wait. I don't think it's going to make I don't think Luke is going to know who her parents are. Actually, he will. He's Luke Skywalker. He knows everything. He is the new Yoda. So maybe he'll say there is another. All right, Andrew, thanks a lot. Where can everybody not find you?
You can not find me on Twitter, and you can sometimes find me on Facebook at Andrew Fantasia. My profile picture is me as a Simpsons character, so I'm very easy to find. And if there's any other Andrew Fantasias, I have to fight them because there can only be one.
Yeah, 15 reasons why Andrew Fantasia's profile picture is a Simpsons character. Number 5 will shock you.
I could not believe number 12 when I read it. I could not believe it.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and PlayStation 4, where you can kick my butt at Battlefront 1 and eventually 2, Petza Fina, P-E-Z-Z-F-I-N-A, P-E-Z-Z-F-I-N-A if you are in America. All right, guys, thank you very much. This has been Flying Casual. Andrew, this is the week of Andrew Fantasia on the channel. We had 3 iRebels last weekend. He was on the podcast. He was on iRebel yesterday. He's on Flying Casual today. He's on Vote or No Confidence tomorrow. And he is doing High Ground with Brock on Saturday. Somebody cut this man a check. He needs it. Anyway, guys, thanks a lot for watching, and may the force of others be with you.
Always.
Hey, scumbags. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.